Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pizzapio. Joining me today is, of course, Kyle Yates and Pat Fitzmaurice. And today is a very special day for everybody out there. I know you're thinking to yourself, well, the season's done. What am I going to do with myself? I don't have any fantasy football drafts going on. All my teams are done. Week 18 is in the books. And I know, like most of you out there, some of you have championships, some of you have playoff appearances, some of you have teams that didn't perform very well. And I bet all of you fanatical people who join us every single day for content at Fantasy Pros are thinking to yourselves, if only I could go back and redraft in 2021, knowing all the things that I know now, knowing how things would work out, what players would break out, and which players would bust out. Oh, if only I could do it all again and have the perfect draft. Well, guess what? It's your day. That's right. Today, we're going to be releasing the perfect draft at fantasypros.com/perfect draft, and this is your opportunity. This is it. You can go back now with all the knowledge that you have, knowing how things work out, and redraft and see just how good of a team you can put together. Talk about an incredible group of all-stars. So not just the guys joining me today, but I mean the people you could put on rosters. It's going to be a very exciting thing to do. And just so you know, we're not just doing it for fun. We're doing it for prizes, because Prize Picks, the leader in single-player daily fantasy sports, and the best way to play player props all over the country. And player props, again, for you fantasy folks out there, this is a fun thing. If you love fantasy, if you love projections, we're talking about over-unders on yardage totals, on receptions, on touchdowns, on passing yards, all kinds of things. Prize Picks has got it. And they are participating with us in the perfect draft. So they're giving out $12,000 in prizes this year for the perfect draft contest. The top 500 scores on our leaderboard January 27th will receive from Prize Picks $1,000 going to the highest score. That's right, $1,000 can be yours just for doing a draft. So you download Prize Picks today and sign up with the promo code PERFECT. Again, that's Prize Picks, and the promo code is PERFECT. And you'll receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. And then you go to fantasypros.com/perfect draft and try your hand. And today, my boys here are going to try their hand and see how high of a score they can get on the perfect draft. And Yates, this is that thing too, I think that the perfectionist in all of us always wants to go back and say, oh, I just want to get it right. I want to get it as good as I possibly can. We try all July and August. Heck, we probably try from January all the way until Labor Day to get every single draft right we can. But this is our opportunity to make it perfect.
Hey, if there is any game that will allow me to go back and at the point where I drafted Allen Robinson everywhere this past draft season and draft Cooper Kupp instead, yes, I will. I am 100% in. So this is a ton of fun. I'm really excited to get into this. Last year was a ton of fun doing this, so I'm excited, man.
And Pat, when you think about this opportunity here, you can get all the players that you didn't have any shares of, that you kicked yourself, that you said, oh man, I wish I had more Cooper Kupp, or I wish I had more exposure to this player. This is that opportunity to right that wrong. And I think that that's very therapeutic. And I think that a lot of people after the 2021 season, and especially the playoffs and how some of them actually ended up turning out with the teams that lost to Ja'Marr Chase, the teams that got obliterated by COVID issues and things like that, this is almost a chance to kind of move on, I feel like, in 2022. I like this. I think this is necessary for some people's psyches to partake in the perfect draft.
Oh yeah, this is the let me bring out the golf analogy. It's the mulligan, Joe. It's you sliced into the woods in the real season, but this is your chance to pipe one down the middle in hindsight. And how many times have we dreamed in high school and college of having the answer key in front of us when we were taking a test? It's not that easy, because we still have to do this to perfection. There are a lot of different routes you can take here, but it is a nice opportunity to capitalize on what we know happened in 2021.
And as Pat said, having the answer key makes it easier, but it's very hard to make it perfect because everybody's got the answer key. So you're trying to get above 100%. Like, this is going to be crazy. We're going to see how the guys score today. And if you want to watch the draft board, I encourage you to go subscribe to our YouTube channel, of course, at youtube.com/fantasypros, where you can watch the draft board unfold. And of course, you can make snide comments about the guys' picks and who they missed, who they should have taken, and then you can go play for yourself as well. Also, I want to remind everybody, all year long, we're still running fantasypros.com/chat, which is our Discord channel where you get to interact with lots of other amazing fantasy players. All of our hardcore fantasy pros, guys and gals are on there. And not to mention, we also have that premium subscription available too, where you can upgrade and partake in all the AMAs and all the stages, which is basically like a radio show where, you call in, we talk through issues in your team. So if you've got keeper questions coming up in your league, draft questions coming up in your league, or just want to talk football, we're going to have amazing content all year long, not just in season, but also postseason for NFL. Not to mention, we've got MLB going on there, the betting channel going on there. So go be a part of it, join for free, and check it out today, again, at fantasypros.com/chat. So, that being said, Pat Fitzmaurice, you are very brave. You're going to go first today, and we are going to take you through Pat's perfect draft. He's going to go do his best to get the highest score he possibly can with all that knowledge and that giant brain of his under that hat. So, Pat Fitzmaurice, are you ready to attempt the perfect draft?
I'm ready, Joe. Let's do it.
Okay, so Yates is now in isolation. We have put Yates in isolation. We're going to kick off Pat Fitzmaurice's perfect draft. And Pat, where are you going to be drafting from? What is the first pick for you?
I'm going to draft from the 5 spot, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And, all right, draft loading here. So I think I know where I'm going. And, I got him in a few of my drafts. Not enough. I think I'm going to be taking Jonathan Taylor, my guy from Wisconsin, and what a season he had. It's hard to believe that he was not, I don't know. I mean, I think Saquon Barkley had a better ADP. They were close last year. So I'm going to right that wrong. And I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor.
Well, it's always good to right the wrongs, that's for sure. And, Pat mentioned also that this is basically just like the mock draft wizard that you're all very accustomed to. And it's giving you all the ADP that you were used to in August and July. And now you get to basically make all the right selections and maneuver through it. So Jonathan Taylor's how you starting. No one can argue that. A guy almost had 2,000 yards rushing. Certainly a disappointing end for the Colts, though. So that is your one. Who is your second pick overall?
All right, I'm debating this. I'm going to try taking, just to make sure that you know what, Joe? I am going to take Justin Jefferson here in the second round.
I see that. I see what you're doing here, Pat. I think I know the strategy, and I think I like it. He's wagering that maybe Cooper Kupp makes it back to him in the third round, is my guess. So, Pat, did the gamble pay off?
It did. And you know what, Joe? I'm really going to redline it here because I want to get a premium tight end for sure. And I do not want to be left without one. So I'm going to grab Mark Andrews here in the third round.
I love this. Pat Fitzmaurice just letting it ride right now. What amazing take you to Vegas kind of feeling right now. I mean, Pat, did the gamble work? So you've got the big time wide receiver, you got Jonathan Taylor, you got Justin Jefferson, you've got Mark Andrews. Who is the next pick for you here in the perfect draft?
It looks like it blew up in my face, Joe.
Oh.
I did not get Cooper Kupp, and that is going to cost me dearly. So let's see. I'm going to have to think about this for a second. Oh, man. I've got to lock in who we know to be the second most valuable receiver in 2021. So I've got to grab Deebo Samuel here.
All right, so Deebo Samuel officially on the roster there. And Deebo Samuel gets he is applauding that decision. Pat Fitzmaurice, you flew too close to the sun, and unfortunately the wings burned off there trying to get Cooper Kupp, but I applaud you. I thought you had it there, and you were going to take Jefferson and Kupp back-to-back, but you threw a wrench in there with the tight end. But look, there's still plenty of ground here to be made up. A lot of running backs popped earlier. We know guys had good half of seasons, guys had good finishes to seasons, so we're going to try to put them all together here and make it work. So where are you going next with your draft?
Now I've got to go with Ja'Marr Chase, Joe. Such a good season for him. And it was kind of interesting because he was not really a consistent scorer like Justin Jefferson. He was sort of, he had the spike weeks and then he had some so-so weeks. So hopefully I'll be able to balance that out with some wide receiver depth at this point. But I got to lock in those spike weeks because he had some monster performances.
Well, it's a pretty impressive wide receiver group that you've assembled here. Let's see if you can make up with some running back value and some quarterback value later in the draft as well. Pat's had a little bit more time to think about this today. We kind of did a rough draft version yesterday, so to speak. So I think Pat's had a little time to marinate on this, and I feel the confidence just oozing from Pat Fitzmaurice today. regarding his perfect draft. So, Pat, where are you going to next with these big-time wide receivers? What comes after?
I'm going to go for the quarterback position, Joe, and I think it's time to take TB12, Tom Brady. Fantastic season. We know, well, actually, you know what, Joe?
10 seconds.
Check that. I'm going to take Justin Herbert.
Oh, I see that. So you're not. So
He was
Tom
still
Brady,
around.
first in attempts, first in completions, first in passing yards, first in touchdowns, and he takes Justin Herbert. Very interesting there. I see what you're doing though. in
Yeah,
terms
I
of
think with
fantasy
the
points.
rushing, he was
The
a
rushing.
little bit more valuable.
Ah.
All
Pat
right.
Fitzmaurice learning from the mistakes of yesterday's dry run on this show. It looks like it's paying off. So, see, kids, you got to do this more than one time. And again, if you just want to do it 1,000 times, you can, which is what's fun. And hopefully you get some prize picks money if you do. And again, that's at fantasypros.com/perfect draft, where you can try your hand on this and see if you can draft better than Pat Fitzmaurice. I don't know. It's looking pretty good so far, Pat. I don't know if anyone's going to beat you. So, what is next up for your roster?
Leonard Fournette, Joe, playoff Lenny, the guy who I was really not interested in investing in because I thought that was sort of an ambiguous backfield coming into the season. I was worried about Fournette and having Gio Bernard maybe play that James White role for Tom Brady. That didn't happen. I was worried about Ronald Jones cutting into his rushing share. That didn't happen. We saw Fournette play this 3-down role and become immensely valuable. So, yeah, I'm going to take him and, correct that mistake I made back in August and September.
Well, Fournette, certainly one of the best draft values at the running back position last year. A fair amount of guys out there, too. The James Connors of the world, Rashad Penny's picked up off the waiver wire. Some other guys that really had good finishes, Devin Singletary and other guys. So Pat's getting cagey here at the running back position. I like where he's going here. All right, Pat, where are you going next? You continuing to build out that running back situation, or you're just looking for BPA at this point?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a stretch here, but I'm going to take Cordero Patterson. I just
All
want to
right.
make sure I lock in that strong early season, and I probably could have waited here. That might have been a little bit of an early reach in a perfect draft. I mean, he worked out so well, but man, he was totally off people's radar back in September.
Well, he was so good in the first 8 weeks of the season that even at the end of the season, he was still hovering around RB1 and wide receiver 1 regardless, which is pretty astounding, and also probably a huge indictment on the collective of running backs that all got hurt this season that allowed Ezekiel Elliott to be RB6 despite his, I think, lackluster finish to the season. That's a kind way of putting it. All right, so starting to build some depth, starting to build some flex positions here. You've got the quarterback, you got the big-time wide receivers, you got Jonathan Taylor. What next, Pat?
All right, Joe, I'm going to lock in. I'm going to try to do a little bit of a platoon thing, baseball style, at the wide receiver position. I'm going to go with a couple guys with fast starts and a couple guys with fast finishes.
Okay.
So I want to go with Marquise Brown and some of the splash games he had early in the season. And then I think I'm going to cover the back end with someone else a little bit down the road. Let me check and see what's available at running back.
All right, while Pat is looking for his next player, because again, this comes fast and furious at you. You know, everything else is simulated here. So this is the challenge. You only have a minute to make your picks here. So this is why sometimes you might end up accidentally picking the wrong guy or having remorse for maybe you could have gotten somebody better if you dug a little deeper. So it's going to take a lot of people, I think, a lot of time to go through several drafts before they start to see all these incredible values, which is amazing because some guys get picked off the waiver wire and end up making huge impacts. We saw Robinson last year, Patterson this year. I mentioned Penny, Singletary, just to name a few. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, another guy who was picked up on a ton of waiver wires and had just an incredible finish to the season. All right, Pat, so who made it next to the roster?
All right, now I have to lock in that great Rashad Penny finish you mentioned a second ago, Joe.
All right.
So, yeah, we've got him. And then speaking of strong finishes, we're going to have to grab Amon-Ra St. Brown and just the amazing December he had. So a couple of strong finishers there for me.
Very nice. And I think St. Brown's a player that I'm very excited about drafting next year. He even proved to me he could do it with Jared Goff and without Jared Goff, which the bar was pretty low already with Jared Goff. So if you can be productive with him and then his backup, I'm sold. You don't need to do any more. I don't care what else they bring in. I think I'm in on Amon-Ra St. Brown next year. I was in on him this year. drafted him in a bunch of spots with my last pick, and unfortunately had to drop him because, well, first 6 weeks were not kind to him in terms of fantasy. So it's nice to see those guys blow up eventually. I just wish they were doing it on my team. Also, I love the new GIFs that come out when we make selections too. I love this on the software. Very cool. The dev team's been working overtime here on this. All right, who was the latest selection to your draft team here?
Okay, it was Joe Burrow, getting a backup to Justin Herbert. And,
very nice.
I think that's a decent pairing. And now I'm going to sort of back up the tight end position, Joe. Kind of a tough call between Rob Gronkowski and Hunter Henry. I don't know, well, if I could go and pinpoint those weeks where Mark Andrews disappointed. There weren't too many of those weeks. I'd love to see which they were and whether Gronk or Henry popped in those weeks. I'm going to make the leap of faith here and go with Rob Gronkowski.
Very good. So Rob Gronkowski now on the team. And you make great points too. It's the bye weeks and everything too to manage through that and somehow get the best productivity. So it's going to take a lot of research here. You have the answer key of who's good, but who's good when, which weeks, and is it enough to have a guy who's been good for a short period of time versus a guy who's just mediocre for a longer period of time? A lot of questions here when it comes to the perfect draft. It's not easy. Pat Fitzmaurice is making it look easy. I can assure you it is not. So you only got a couple spots left to fill in the roster. We got to get a defense on this team as well. So Pat, you got one little cherry pick player left, it looks like, and then the defense, and then I think we might be moving on to Yates. We'll get him out of the isolation booth, which I'd like to keep him there as long as I can. So take your time,
Pat. The cherry pick player, Joe, is going to be Elijah Mitchell. And, what a surprise he was. Someone who was not drafted in most drafts back in August and September. But a guy who wound up being everything we were hoping Trey Sermon was going to be.
Oh,
and Trey Sermon was such a big whiff for me, Joe. I don't know about you.
Well, all of us. Me too. I mean, I think we all agreed that somebody was going to be very productive out of that backfield. And, unfortunately, most of us thought it was going to be Trey Sermon. And then he was inactive week 1 against the Lions. Remember that? Sounds like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? But, kind of spun us on our head. And it should have been an indicator of how 2021 was going to proceed after that.
Yes. And now to wrap it up with the defense. And, not many people saw the Dallas defense being as impactful as it was, but it was a consistently high-scoring fantasy defense. And that defense actually carried the Cowboys kind of down the stretch when Dak slumped. Who would have thought that? A lot of people thinking it was going to be a liability, and that was a reason to draft Dak Prescott because he was going to be in a lot of shootouts. But the Dallas defense overachieved all season.
Yeah,
so I grabbed
Parsons,
them.
Especially making a huge impact on that defense as the season went on. Not to mention, you're right, all the turnovers they created. So your perfect draft is in the books. Pat, you can leave the screen up because this is your score here. So what is your official score here of your perfect draft here that you're going to compete against Yates?
Okay, so it's 2,814.28.
That sounds like a good number to me. Sounds like a real good number.
It was better than my dry run yesterday where some mistakes were made. The big regret here, Joe, is that I got cute with Cooper Kupp in the second round. That was a big mistake. So I'm top 8% here, but
you got cute with Cooper Kupp in the third round, just to be clear. He was still there in the third round, and you took Andrews.
Third, yes.
So like I said, you were Icarus, baby. You were up there. Things were good. Pat Fitzmaurice is saying let it ride, and unfortunately, Cooper Kupp rode on to some other roster. But hey, a very good team nonetheless, that's for sure. All right, let's bring Yates back from the isolation booth. Yates, you've got a score of 2,814.28 to be specific. So
all right.
It was a doozy here. Pat Fitzmaurice was just making it rain for a little while there, and he was really feeling strong for a little bit. Got checked a little bit by the perfect draft, but rebounded very nicely at the end, had some really good running back selections. So, Pat, you already know who you picked, so you can hang out here. So, Yates, if you can get your draft up here on the screen, we will go ahead and start with yours. And I know you've been playing around here a little bit with the perfect draft. It takes a little while to kind of get the sense of where the values are, and you want to get those value picks on your roster. I guess it really is a matter of how long can you wait, and do you run the risk of missing out on them? I think that is the dance we're dealing with here.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's the balance of getting the good players, the players that succeeded and did well in 2021, but then balancing it out with the ADP, right? You don't want to have to reach 3 rounds to be able to get this guy when you know that you can kind of wait it out. But then there's the risk of what happens if you wait too long.
All right, let's get Yates here on the board, and let's start with him, and let's see how Yates' perfect draft goes. Yates, who's your first pick, and where are you drafting out of?
Yeah, so I'm drafting out of the 3 spot. So I wanted to be able to at least ensure that I can get Jonathan Taylor here in the first round, right? That's like the main priority. Where if I miss on Jonathan Taylor, we know how that first round went. We know that so many of these guys just completely busted at the running back position. So I want to make sure that I get Jonathan Taylor on my roster. So didn't want to push it down a little bit too far here. I'm going at the 103, and I'm just going to grab Jonathan Taylor here.
All right, so you both start out the same, both with Taylor. Let's see where it goes from here. Yates, when it comes back in the second round, are you going to push the envelope with Cooper Kupp, or are you going to take him on your roster, maybe wait an extra round, see how it goes? What are you going to do?
Yeah, so this is, again, the balance of what I was talking about, where I look at ADP and Cooper Kupp is sitting there at an overall ADP of 44, right? And I'm here where I've got guys like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown. I'm not going to be selecting them, but just at 21 and 25 overall. So I might go back to the running back position here and at least take a look at some of the guys. And CEH, David Montgomery, Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, they're really not doing it for me. So I am just going to come back around, and I'm just going to make sure that I get Cooper Kupp on my roster, not going to play that waiting game. Grab Cooper Kupp here to stack him with Jonathan Taylor.
All right, very interesting here. Pat took Justin Jefferson. Kupp was available in the third. He passed again and took Mark Andrews there. But certainly, I think if he had to do it all again, he might take Kupp also, which probably would have put him over 30,000 is my guess, or 3,000, excuse me. So now that you've got Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor, the 2 best offensive players in fantasy football, where do you go from here?
Yeah, so I would have loved to grab Justin Jefferson and wait it out with Cooper Kupp. He went 1 pick before mine. So, yeah, so would have loved to be able to do that. I'm looking at Chris Godwin here. I know that he missed the last couple of games of the season, but he was a dominant receiver when he was healthy. I can wait on guys like Jamar Chase, who's way down the board here. Go back to the running back position. Really, no one sitting there. So I'm going to take a look at the quarterback position, and we know who the QB1 is, and that it wasn't particularly close. So I'm looking at making sure that I can shore up each of the number 1 overall finishes here at the position. So I will go Josh Allen here at the 303 and hope that the tight end falls to me, Mark Andrews, in the 4th round.
A very interesting strategy here. Yates going for the early quarterback. And, of course, Pat going for the later one, and he got 2 really good ones pretty late in this draft. So let's see what happens next year. Did indeed Mark Andrews make it back to you in the 4th, Yates?
He did. So I'm just going to just lock up each of the top 4 overall finishes there, right? I got Jonathan Taylor as the RB1, Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver 1, Josh Allen, QB1. I will go Mark Andrews here in the 4th round and just scoop him up.
All right, so Mark Andrews on that roster. So far, the overlap, you both have Taylor, you both have Mark Andrews on your roster. The difference is you've got Josh Allen and you've got Cooper Kupp on that roster. So far, some big point totals here. Let's see if you can continue to manage the perfect draft, Yates. Who's next on the board for you?
Yeah, so I look at the running back position, guys like Darrell Henderson, who, got out to that monstrous start, but then didn't particularly, they were injured, so didn't really have a solid end of the season. Damian Harris did finish with a good fantasy finish. I know that he was a solid contributor, but not at this point of the draft. There's someone else that I can wait it out and get there to my RB2 spot and then take some value shots later on. So go back to the wide receiver position. I've got guys like T. Higgins here, who I know was dominant. I've got Jamar Chase there as well. So I think I can, I'm at the 503, so I don't have time to be able to.
5 seconds, Yates.
Yep. I'm going to go with Jamar Chase here, and I'm just going to make sure that I get him onto my roster. I think he finishes a top 5 fantasy wide receiver this season. So make sure that I scoop him up here and pair him with Cooper Kupp.
All right, another player of overlap there on both of your rosters, Jamar Chase. So we're giving you some of these values here that you can obviously take a look at and use, and that's why we're doing the show today, kind of help you out a little bit, give you some a couple little nuggets here of where some players are and what rounds you might want to be targeting them. So Chase and Cooper Kupp, not too shabby there, my friend. Where else are you going with your next pick?
So I look at the wide receiver position, and the guy that I want to make sure that I get onto my roster is the third highest available wide receiver there, which is Deebo Samuel. I look at the running back position. I've got a guy that I want to make sure that I get onto my roster, but I think that I can wait it out as I come back around the turn. So I'm going to scoop up Deebo Samuel here and hope that Leonard Fournette falls to me.
Another overlap player here, Deebo Samuel on both rosters, and it looks like Yates, from what he's saying here, got his way. Is that true?
That is correct. I've got Leonard Fournette here sitting here for me. So Leonard Fournette obviously missed the last couple games of the season, but I mean, I think he was a top 10 running back. I think maybe even a top 4, top 5 guy. So even with missing those couple of games, so I'll make sure that I scoop him up here to pair with Jonathan Taylor.
Fascinating as I'm watching your draft after watching Pat's draft, the amount of late round running back dart throws that worked out. As opposed to the guys like Chris Carson that you were mentioning, right? Remember, you look at the second round running backs and you went, ew, growth. Ew, I don't like it at all. It's pretty much exactly true. And I think that's something we need to learn from going into next year as well. That hero running back strategy, I think, is something that's far more appealing as far as I'm concerned. Most of my better teams I know are kind of structured that way this year. All right, Yates, who's next for you?
So I've got James Conner here sitting where I could definitely take the shot on him. I am curious if he's going to fall to me. Otherwise, I've got Jalen Waddle as the 5th highest recommended player here on ADP. So I think I will take the shot on Jalen Waddle here. This was a guy that, Joe, you and I were all in on. Yep. I've got everywhere this season. So I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle here at the 8-10. And I do have the turn. So, yeah, I can wait it out with James Conner. I'll go Jalen Waddle here.
Jalen Waddle was my favorite wide receiver coming in to this season from the rookie class, and my goodness, did he pay off in a big way in those PPR leagues, especially, right? Those plus 100 receptions there for a rookie. You don't see that happen all the time. Had Chase not been Chase, I think we'd all be talking a little bit more about Jalen Waddle, but Chase was Chase. So, Yates, who's next for you up?
Well, hey, it works out that I've got both of them on this roster. Again, the perfect draft. I can go back and get my way.
Yeah, wow, what a wonderful thing. This is like that child that like always wants more and more and wants to have everything, and this is kind of fun. I like this. The fat kid in the candy store analogy really works.
Yeah. So I'm going to take James Conner here at the 903. And again, where we're drafting this, I need to just be able to balance out the bye weeks with my starting running backs, right? I'm not drafting as many running backs as I would in a normal draft for depth purposes and anything like that. So I'm just going to take James Conner here, and then maybe I'll take another shot with a running back later on. But I will take James Conner here. Again, missed a couple games there at the end of the season, but was just dominant from a touchdown perspective. So add him to the squad here to be my first bench player.
And you could see the gif there, very excited child there with that selection from Yates. I love the gifs that pop up when you make the selection. I think that is the greatest thing ever. So, all right, let's continue on here. A great value there, running back with James Conner, no doubt about that. He was a touchdown machine this year. All right, Yates, you're up again here. Where are you going next?
So I think I can wait it out at the grabbing my second tight end. I'm going to go to the quarterback position here because running back, the top guys are like Gus Edwards, Tony Pollard, Alexander Mattison, like Ramondre Stevenson, fine. But there's a guy that I can grab later on to be that 4th running back. Wide receiver, there are definitely some values later on down the board. So I'm going to push that a little bit further down as well. I'm going to grab my second quarterback here again to balance out that bye week for Josh Allen. I'm going to go with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow bye week in week 10 to counteract the bye week in week 7 from Josh Allen. Joe Burrow, just a dominant season again with Jamar Chase and that receiving core. So Joe Burrow to be my second quarterback.
Joe Burrow has my vote for MVP. I want to give him the MVP. He made the Bengals relevant. The Bengals, come on, in that division where nobody gave him a shot and they won the division. They won the division going away where they basically last week said, no, we don't even have to play at all. Now we're just going to all hang out and sit. I love the Joe Burrow season and what a finish it was for him. It's a massive yardage total. Let's talk about a great playoff run for him. I think just the beginning of how good that offense is going to be in the future. The future looks bright for them. How's it look for this next pick, Yates?
So kind of torn here because there are some wide receivers that I can definitely scoop up later on. Guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm going to make sure that I grab him to my roster. There's some other guys that I can take and add there, but I'm going to go to the running back position. I might be able to wait on this guy a little bit more, but I mean, his end of the season was just dominant to counteract the, Leonard Fournette, James Conner missing the last few weeks of the season. I'm going to go with Rashad Penny here in the 11th round.
What's it feel like to draft Rashad Penny and know that it was successful now?
Right.
Right?
Right. I've been drafting Rashad Penny way too many times, and it's failed me.
This
So
is the
this
first
is
time you can be confident that you know exactly what you're getting at a Rashad Penny. I'm glad you lived to
refreshing
see
change
this
of
moment.
pace. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
It's a feel
All
good
right.
moment in 2022, Yates.
Yes. All right. So here in the 12th round, I'm going to scoop up Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Nice.
This is just a guy that I was pounding the table for in draft season as the guy that you had to like reach on in the last round of your draft. And you ended up having to drop him to be able to pick up some of those waiver claims. You weren't able to hold on to him the entire year unless you had super deep benches, but paid off in a big way at the end of the year. And I'm super interested to see where exactly Amon-Ra St. Brown goes in ADP this next year. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Detroit does at the, on the offensive side of the ball to be able to balance it out. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, I will add him here.
Another overlap player and another player I think we're all very excited about in 2022 after that incredible finish. I mean, what a monster in terms of volume he was in the last 5-6 weeks of the season. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this all gets scored out, Yates. I know you're looking for your next pick here, but you went big quarterback early. I wonder if that is a good strategy or a bad one. I guess we're going to find out pretty soon because when you go big quarterback early, there's some really good quarterbacks late. Burrow, Herbert, some guys like that. Jalen Hurts, another one too, certainly from a rushing standpoint, had a pretty darn good season statistically. So now that you got Amon-Ra St. Brown on that roster, I know there's a couple other guys still floating out there. Who are you looking for next, Dad?
It's really interesting because there were 3 players that I wanted to make sure that I added, and I've only got 2 spots in the DST spot. So the guys that I'm considering here are Hunter Renfrow, Cordero Patterson. I'm aware.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Hunter Renfrow here at this point and add him because of just, I mean, this is a guy where I don't even know what his ADP was. Like, he wasn't even showing up past like 250. Like, no one was drafting Hunter Renfrow.
It's funny, Yates, you say that, but I actually had Renfrow in a couple of drafts because I felt like that was an easy one. It was an easy gimme that somebody else had to show up there. It was probably going to be a guy like Hunter Renfrow in that offense after Waller. And, of course, Waller's injury, I don't...
And Henry Ruggs certainly aided that.
Certainly aided it. You're right.
Yeah, so here at the last spot, it's going to come down to, do I want to draft Cordero Patterson, who had just a dominant start to the season, didn't end as efficiently as we wanted him to, but then also, do I take that second tight end to be able to balance out Mark Andrews' bye week and go with a guy like Dawson Knox at this point? So even, is Dalton Schultz still available? Dalton Schultz is still available. A different bye week. Is it Cordero Patterson? Is it Dalton Schultz? Oh, man. I'm going to go with 10 seconds left on the clock here. I am going to go with Dalton Schultz. I think he did finish as a top 5 tight end off the top of my head. So
now you've got me curious, Yates, because I wonder, is it better to take the 0 on that by a tight end and just have the dominant wide receiver / running back guy? It's a fair question to ask, because tight end is so lame at the bottom. And then also... another thing to look at all those values at tight end. Schultz was there. Knox was there. Guys who showed up there out of nowhere, basically, again. So another thing to carry over and learn from 2021 and apply to 2022. Next up here, your defense. Last pick. Where are you going?
Yeah, so I know the Buffalo Bills were a stout defense. I know the New England Patriots were, bounced right back to being a top tier fantasy option there. But I do think with Trevon Diggs having like how many interceptions to end the year?
5,000, I think.
Dallas Cowboys defense was just absolutely dominant. So, I am going to take the Dallas Cowboys defense here, who is like way down the board. No one was drafting Dallas. And again, like, it's fair based on what they did last year in 2020. We shouldn't have been drafting them, but they rebounded in a big way. I will take the Dallas Cowboys defense here to end out. Pat, what was your score?
Well, let's get yours first here, Yates. I want to announce yours. Yours is what? 28, 95, right?
Yep.
38.
Yep, 2,895.38. Pat, what did you have?
Close.
Yates got me. I had 28, 14, 28.
Great selections at the end by you with guys like Eli Mitchell, a couple other fantastic buys there. But what a wide receiving core both you guys put together. And I think it's also something to take out, Pat, where when you're looking back now at this roster and what it looks like, the construction is what? Get your big-time running back, load up on all those big-time wide receivers, get a good value at quarterback, and then take shots at running back. Is that kind of what it looks like? And is that something now that we can take with us and start to think about crafting our strategies for 2022?
Yeah, it is. That hero running back strategy. A lot of people were into in 2021, and it kind of worked here. Get the hero and Jonathan Taylor, then hit those top wide receivers. Although in doing this exercise, Joe, what really struck me, Think of how much you would have been heckled by your buddies at an in-person draft if you would have drafted this way. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you reached for Cooper Kupp. You took him ahead of Robert Woods. Oh, what are you doing? Like, wait, why are you drafting Hunter Renfrow? Why are you drafting Rashad Penny? Just It's amazing how these things work out and things you just never see coming, 4 months earlier. So kind of amazing in hindsight.
To Pat's point, to a certain extent, doesn't this kind of drive home the get your guys you believe in, right? I mean, if you believed in Ja'Marr Chase and remember his draft stock took a precipitous fall towards the end of preseason where he was having trouble because the ball didn't have a stripe on it anymore and he was dropping a couple passes and people were saying, oh my God, what's going on? And I don't know about you, but I took advantage of that personally. I had Ja'Marr Chase from that moment on. That's when all my Ja'Marr Chase shares started to come because that became the value. And I think it goes back to that point. You mentioned how much we were on Waddle, how much you liked Penny, right? Sometimes those things, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they do work out, but it is a war of attrition and patience. Sometimes we're not afforded that patience, but when you're looking back at this particular perfect draft sequence we just did, it seems like the patience and the players we believed in worked out to our advantage eventually.
Well, it's interesting. You look at this roster that I put together and guys like Leonard Fournette, Ja'Marr Chase, Deebo Samuel, and a bunch of these later guys, James Conner, like Dalton Schultz, all of those players have a certain theme, even Hunter Renfrow to an extent, and it was ambiguity. It was ambiguity at the positional, that they had on their respective teams. Like we didn't know what was going to happen with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk coming off of that dominant end to 2020, and we thought that Deebo Samuel's ADOT was all that we talked about in leading up to draft season, where it was like 2 yards ahead of the line of scrimmage. Like that was his average depth of target. And that drastically changed because something happened to Brandon Ayuk. So I think I'm going to be more willing to take these shots next year on the guys that come from ambiguous backfields, ambiguous wide receiver cores. Like those are the guys that if things go their way and you get the value points on them, then they are absolutely league winners.
Yeah, ambiguous running back situations on good offenses. I think that's the trick, trying to pinpoint those, take some shots, take some shares, and see what works out. But the wide receivers, I feel like, dominated this perfect draft. So I feel like that's something also we need to start to reprogram our brain. The big-time quarterbacks, the big-time wide receivers, they drive point totals every week. They're the ones that are out there winning you weeks most of the time. And the running backs at certain times weren't even on the field for a myriad of reasons. And that's not just this year. Go back to 2020, it's the same exact thing. So it's enough now where it's not an anomaly, it's a trend, and I think all of us need to be aware of it and start working that into our brains for next season's strategy. And again, I encourage all of you to go out there and try this yourself at fantasypros.com/perfect draft. And remember, Prize Picks is giving away $12,000 in prizes this year for the Perfect Draft contest. 500 top scorers on the leaderboard on January 27th will receive a prize from Prize Picks with $1,000 going to the winner just for drafting. That's it. You're having fun. You're sitting there in your office. You're sitting there in your house. You're sitting on the couch. Just draft. Have some fun. Perfect draft and kind of right the wrongs of 2021. I want you to go out there and think of this as being a hero. Go out there and think of this as your opportunity to be kind of like an Avenger of fantasy football and get everyone in the right place at the right time for once. And then you can sit back, feel good about it, and spend that $1,000 on, I don't know, a present for me. So you can send it to me. I'll give you my address. But don't forget also to download Prize Picks and make sure you use that promo code PERFECT when you do. And you receive a 100% deposit match up to $100 and go play all of the props and daily fantasy stuff that they've got at Prize Picks. It's a great site. And this is the time of year, too, where you're looking for some action, looking for some fun, and Prize Picks can provide you with that. And don't forget also, join our chat at Discord over at fantasypros.com/chat. Get in there for free and poke around and see what you can get there because there's a lot of fantastic channels out there, and the higher up you are in our subscription at Fantasy Pros, the more access you have to some amazing opportunities to, again, interact with us one-on-one. And we had a lot of success with our users this year. A lot of championships were won because I know we just hosted our Week 18 show, and boy, oh boy, were people really excited about how things worked out. And, of course, don't forget about our YouTube channel, youtube.com/fantasypros, where you can go ahead and subscribe today. Watch this very show, not just listen to it, but watch all the podcasts, all of our off-season content. We've also got baseball content on our baseball channel, Betting Pros content going on all year long as well. So go check out all of our family of YouTube channels and subscribe to all of them today because, well, you enjoy fantasy sports, and that's why you're listening and watching in the first place. So that'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Kyle Yates, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.